The city stirred beneath the pale morning light, unaware of the storm brewing behind closed doors. Lucien Cross entered Cross Tower with the quiet confidence of someone who had weathered every trial thrown his way. Damien Voss had escalated yet again. This time, it was not just the markets, nor simple rumors. It was a high-risk gambit aimed at shaking Lucien's influence through intimidation, manipulation, and pressure on his closest allies. Yet every piece of the puzzle had already been anticipated. Adrian appeared at his side, holding the latest brief. "They're moving all at once. Partners, investors, even some board members outside our direct control are being approached. Damien's putting everything on the line." Lucien's silver eyes, crescent-shaped and calm, flicked to the reports. His fingers brushed the black onyx crescent earring dangling from his left ear. Pressure reveals character. If they act out of fear, they remove themselves from the equation. If they act with reason, they reinforce their loyalty. Let them act. Vivian Hale sat in her office at Hale Enterprises, reviewing the same news feeds, trying to mask her irritation with forced composure. She watched as one by one, Lucien's responses to Damien's attacks were not only effective, but decisive. Each partner who wavered was reassured, each rumor neutralized, and the perception of weakness she had counted on was nowhere to be found. Her fingers clenched the edge of her desk. Pride and habit refused to admit it, but a faint, unspoken unease was beginning to creep into her mind. "He's surviving everything," she muttered under her breath, forcing herself to smile. "It's impossible." Damien, across the city, slammed his hand onto the table in frustration. He's not reacting emotionally. He anticipated every move, every attack, every rumor, and he's turned it into advantage. If the markets and perception cannot touch him, then we take the riskier route, his inner circle. We isolate him and hope for mistakes. Back at Cross Tower, Lucien reviewed the newly surfaced threats. Files, emails, and whispers designed to intimidate were met with calm efficiency. Every partner affected received direct reassurance. Every piece of disinformation was countered, and every potential crack in loyalty was fortified. He did not panic, did not overreact. He moved with the precision of someone who had trained for exactly this moment. Adrian leaned slightly closer. "You've prepared for everything." Lucien's voice was quiet, but unwavering. "Not everything, but for what is likely, yes. Anticipation turns chaos into clarity." By midday, Vivian attended a high-profile luncheon, attempting to maintain an air of confidence among investors. Yet as she saw headlines praising Lucien's decisive handling of Damien's most audacious moves, a slight tremor betrayed her composure. In her mind, the thought surfaced, "He is no longer the man I thought I knew." She shook it away, forcing a laugh, forcing her tone to sharp confidence. Pride would not let her admit truth. Evening descended, and Damien launched his desperate gamble, contacting several of Lucien's closest allies with fabricated evidence of betrayal, hoping to sow doubt and force Lucien into a reactive state. The whispers reached the press, and the pressure escalated. Lucien received the notifications calmly. "They hope for haste, for emotional reaction," he said to Adrian. "Instead, we respond with transparency. Any attempt to manipulate perception becomes an opportunity to reinforce trust. Every falsehood exposed strengthens credibility." Adrian's eyes reflected awe. "He's transforming their attacks into assets." Lucien's gaze remained steady on the city beyond the windows. That is the difference between reaction and strategy. The one who controls their response controls the outcome. Vivian watched from her tower, this belief flickering in her expression. Lucien's allies had not faltered. The Crosshair's precision and composure had neutralized Damien's most personal and aggressive gambit. Pride twisted uncomfortably in her chest, but she could not allow herself to acknowledge it. To do so would be to admit that the man she had demeaned had surpassed her expectations, and that realization was unbearable. Night fell, and the city glimmered with lights like distant stars. Lucien stood alone by the window of his office, fingers lightly touching the black onyx crescent earring. Every threat had been mitigated, every partner reassured, every rumor dismantled. Damien's gambit had failed, leaving the Voss camp exposed and visibly frustrated. Every action he had anticipated had reinforced his position. Across town, Vivian stared at the illuminated skyline, pride warring with the first faint tendrils of regret. For the first time, she realized that Lucien Cross was no longer the quiet, incompetent analyst she had once dismissed, but she forced herself to believe it was temporary, a fleeting moment of competence. She would not yet admit that she had misjudged him. Damien, meanwhile, gathered his remaining strategists, his frustration palpable. He anticipated everything. Every move we made has been countered. He is no ordinary heir. He is calculating, methodical, and unshakable. If we continue, the risk grows exponentially. Lucien, calm and composed, reviewed the day's outcomes. The Cross family's tradition had once sent him out into the world unshielded, untested, and unproven. Now every trial, every betrayal, every attempted attack had been met, measured, and converted into strength. He had no lingering attachment to Vivian. She was irrelevant to his purpose. His focus was clear: legacy, strategy, and the unflinching execution of every decision. The night deepened, and the city seemed to exhale under his steady vigilance. Damien's desperate gambit had failed, Vivian's pride had begun to crack, and the Cross heir stood untouchable, calm, and fully prepared for whatever storms might come next. Every step, every action, and every decision reflected the legacy of the Cross family, tempered, tested, and unbroken. The black onyx crescent earring glinted faintly, a quiet emblem of endurance and mastery. Lucien Cross had survived yet another test, and in the shadows, both Damien and Vivian were forced to acknowledge, however silently, that the quiet analyst everyone had underestimated was no longer someone to demean or dismiss.
Thank you for sharing this chapter with us at Velvet Chapters Brew. Comment, like, and subscribe to see where the next page takes us.